Today, we continue our series, Jesus Inside Out. And I love this series because, we've been exploring a deeper look into Jesus' heart and looking not just at what he did, but how he felt and how he reacted. And today we're going to focus and talk about one of those emotions that we've all experienced, especially this morning, surprise. So, some of you might be surprised that surprise is an emotion. Some of you might be surprised that it has an R right before the P. It's not surprise, but it's surprise, right? But it's one of the 7 universal emotions. And it's the feeling we encounter when we encounter sudden and unexpected situations, which we've all felt. Like I said, and actually, we felt a lot earlier in our lives. I think the day we were born, coming out of the womb, hello world, that's a big surprise. And now it's amazing to me that no one can remember that moment, right? Anyone, raise your hand if you remember the moment you were born. I think, all right, yeah, well, you were closest to it. Yes, that makes sense. Not a lot of other surprises have been in your life yet. But that's great because I can't. But can you imagine what it was like coming out of this wonderful warmth place, right, of safety and security and coming out and saying, whoo, what is that? Masked people, right? It's cold. Yeah, no wonder we cry. And since that beautiful day of ours, the surprises haven't stopped, right? Am I right? Surprise is one of my favorite emotions because the funniest experiences in life involve surprises. Actually, most of the jokes, they're surprising, right? We don't expect the end of the joke. So, hey, that was funny, right? So a lot of surprise feeds a lot of laughter and funniness. It can be a pleasant or fun surprise, like when you're rolling a Yahtzee. That's for my mom. She's a big Yahtzee fan. And when you run into a friend at the grocery store, right? Surprise. Those are great surprises. Many times, a surprise can be terrifying. When your child suddenly jumps off your furniture and misses their landing and breaks an arm. That's a big surprise. Or when the moment happens when you get those positive test results back, right? Or that ultrasound is showing life, or maybe not. Those moments can be terrifying. Or that moment when that special someone says, yes, I like you too. That's a big surprise. And terrifying. It's not surprising that we tend to remember the surprising moments, except for, the day you were born. One exception. It's almost always the thing you want to talk about, right? Or post about. It's that surprise of the day. And probably gets the most likes when you post it. You either love surprises or you don't. And that probably depends on the circumstances, true enough, but sometimes those circumstances are caused by our own short-sightedness, being blind to the signs and not heeding wisdom. So in Proverbs 22:17, if you guys have your Bible, go ahead and open them up. If not, I got it on the screen. Pay attention and turn your ear to the sayings of the wise. And here's something important. How we react to surprises reveals something about us, what's in our heart. It's a tell of what's in our hearts. And if you're taking notes today, write this down. Surprise can open our eyes because we human beings have a tendency to get distracted, right? Quick story. A few weeks ago, our car started telling me there was some low tire pressure. It's a pretty fancy car now, not used to having fancy cars tell me everything that's wrong, and this one shows a little alert. when your tires are low in pressure. So the front right tire was low in pressure, which wasn't much of a surprise to me because it happened before. And thanks to my brother, I have an awesome air compressor. Danny will get this at home with fancy nozzle on the end with a pressure gauge built right in, just like the ones you find at the gas stations, right? Yeah, I know, right? It is awesome. I love it. That tire was maybe 1 or 2 pounds off before, and it wasn't low to me, so I just filled it up of 1 pound. It's not a big deal. So I figured, the sensor was a little too sensitive, right? Because it was showing a pressure that was lower than what my gauge was showing. So I took note of that, and my trust in that sensor had eroded, and that had an impact on my later decisions. You're going to find out. So a little more backstory. This is going to help set the stage. I promise. We have a newer EV, and after we bought it, I was surprised to find out that they're much heavier than regular vehicles because of the batteries, and therefore they burn through tires a lot faster. And that's a whole nother story to tell. So I took the car in to have its tires rotated for the first time, and I was told by the tire shop that I would most likely need a new set of tires the next time I come in. And it was only at 8,000 miles. I was late on the rotation. I'm like, wait, what? It's a brand new car. 8,000 miles. Tires are supposed to last 55,000 miles at least, right? I mean, come on. Yeah, that would be less than 15,000. There's no way. That was not my favorite surprise that day. So, flashing forward, I tell Steph about the tire alert. I point that way because that's where our car is parked. And tell her, don't worry, Steph. I'll check out the low tire, but I just wanted you to know, just because I know what's going to happen if you see the alert. I'm going to get the alert. She asked, but Steve, when do we need new tires? And I'm generally really frugal. And knowing that the tires still had plenty of tread on them, in my opinion, I told her, we've got at least a few more thousand miles. And so she voiced some concerns, right? And she pointed out the rainy season's coming up. It's October, right? Or, September. Rainy season's coming up. And, I said, don't worry. I think we'll be just fine. Besides, I'm the one driving most of the time in that car. The low tire pressure alert ended up being just like one of those inconsistent things throughout, the past. Oh, I'm sorry. So I told her, don't worry. And through the rest of that week, the alert kept popping up. And it was very inconsistent. So on mornings when it would seem to be colder, it would show up. But on the days when it was warmer, not so much. And hey, that makes total sense, right? The pressure in the tires is going to change with the environmental pressures outside. So I just assumed it's, again, overly sensitive sensor. Now I flash forward to that weekend. I parked the car in the garage, and as the garage door was closing, I heard a loud ping and a rattle. And after inspection, I find that our garage door spring broke. Yeah, not so good, right? The garage door is closed. The car is inside the garage. And my immediate thought was, oh, great. The car is stuck in the garage. How am I going to get it out? And this roll-up door, it has 2 springs. Luckily, one still worked. And so I wanted to get the car out of the garage. Obviously, you got to do that to get the spring fixed and everything. So I asked my sons to help open up the garage door, and I channeled my inner Bruce, Banner, David Banner. Yeah, Bruce Banner, right? And my Hulkness, and just lifted up that garage door, and we got the car out. So that solved that surprise for the morning. But the very next day after church, the boys and I, we went to a baseball game, and then we stopped by Amazon Fresh, do a return, and then while we come out to get in the car says, hey, the tire's low. But this time, the car is saying, warning, imminent death and danger. Do not drive this car. The tire is super low. And I'm like, oh. Okay, I'll check it, I guess. I haven't seen this one before. So I get out, and sure enough, the front right tire was starting to go flat. I'm like, oh no. We're like a mile from home, and I don't want to wait an hour and a half for AAA to show up, right? or try and change a tire in a car I've never changed a tire before, right there in the parking lot. So I said, boys, buckle up. We're heading home. And yeah, it felt like a flat tire on the way home, and pulled up into the driveway and hulked up the garage door again and started the process of trying to plug that tire and fill it up. And to no surprise, I got all new tires the next day. So surprise, surprise. Yeah, to say the least. Now, some of you might be thinking, what did you do wrong, Steve? Because you had a lot of calamities those couple of weeks. And I like to say thank you for being empathetic, right? But the truth is the signs were there, right? The real surprise was in the revelation and reminder for me to stop burning rubber. Really quick. The guy who refused to rotate, I didn't add this in, but a guy came over, Tesla sends a guy out to rotate your tires. He refused to rotate my tires the first time, and that's why it took me so long to get them rotated. Right, I know. Right. He refused. He said, you don't have enough tread. Anyway, he said, who's the leadfoot? And I thought, and amazing how fast this happens in your mind, but I thought, is that me or is that Steph? Wait, could it be Steph? There's no way it could be Steph. If you ever know Steph, the way she drives, there's no lead-footness about her. Had to be me. So, he saw me stumbling in my response. He said, you know what? I suggest maybe you get a new set of tires the next time. Anyway, that was funny too, and surprising. But it was a reminder to me to stop burning rubber, to slow down and take time to think, see, and listen. And maybe I'll avoid some frustrating surprises. But as the saying goes, life is full of surprises. I like to add that, remember, it's not, that saying has life in it. It's not in death that we have surprises. It's in our lives and life. Surprises bring life and can bring us to life. So now we're going to shift focus off of me and my surprises. We're going to shift to Jesus and what surprised Jesus. Here's the thing. Jesus understood surprise. Totally. In fact, there were moments where he was surprised himself. And you might think, that seems pretty strange, right? Son of God, the one who knows everything, right? God made himself human. Why would Jesus be surprised about anything? John, verse 14, the Word became flesh and made his dwelling among us. But he felt things deeply. Jesus, throughout Scripture, throughout the New Testament, he experienced times that were troubling to his soul and spirit. And you can reference, for examples, Matthew 26:38, John 11:33, 35. He grieved, he cried, he was happy and surprised as well. And we're going to get into a couple of those examples. So if you can turn to Matthew 8, 5 through 13, the first example I have is when a Roman centurion came to Jesus and said, just say the word, and my servant will be healed. Now, Jesus was thaumazo. You can say that, thaumazo. That's Greek for amazed, surprised. By this man's faith, Jesus marveled at the fact that this Roman, a non-Jew, and not just any non-Jew, a captain of the army of the oppressing empire occupying the land of the lives of all in Israel. I mean, are you for real? This is your enemy. This is your oppressor, right? Your people's oppressor. But Jesus knows the real oppression, right? And the real oppressor. Bear with me with this. But look at the bigger picture using God's analogy. Imagine you were married to a beautiful bride whom you deeply love, truly love, and you gave her everything she ever needed. And she ran off with a horrible, abusive guy who does horrible things, murders without impunity, takes advantage of this person you love so much. And now imagine that this guy comes to you and asks you for a favor. Now that's surprise. How would you feel? And perhaps that's a little bit of hyperbole, but I think you get the point. There had to have been some challenging emotions with this centurion having greater faith than anyone in Israel, because that is what God feels for his people. He's married. He made a covenant with Israel. He's in love with Israel. Jesus came first, right? For the lost sheep of the house. So he's in love. And so you can imagine what God is feeling in these moments. That somebody else outside of who should know him is asking for a favor. So think of that. It's a very challenging struggle, right? In that moment, Jesus experienced surprise at that man's faith. And stay with me. This gets even deeper in another phenomenally surprising story. It's absolutely incredible. So in Matthew 15, 21 through 28, and if you've spent time studying this, if you spent a lot of time geeking out on the Bible, this story is it's amazing when you read it for the first time, but when you, again, what I just talked about with the centurion, if you look at the big picture and if you place yourself in the shoes of Jesus, of God, then it's just unbelievable. A Canaanite woman asked Jesus to heal and cast out her daughter's demons. So Jesus was just rejected. I'm going to set up some stage here, okay, because it's easy to read these things and not understand what the moment's all about. Jesus was just rejected by religious leaders. He had just had a deep, very difficult conversation with the people he loves, and they were telling him, you're wrong, you're bad, I don't believe in you, and I don't love you. I'm sorry. What do you have to say about that? And so Jesus, he tells the truth. It's hard truths to these leaders. But then he needs to take a break. And wouldn't you, after an emotional conversation like that, and an argument, most of us, I know I do, I like to go, I need to get away. I need a moment. So Jesus has his moment. And he gets in, he goes across the Galilee, the Kinneret, and he goes into the land of Zor, which is non-Jews. Get away from the people, right? That into a place where it's like going to the mall or Costco. Nobody knows you, right? It's that little release, getting away. And so he's in this place, and this Canaanite woman runs up to him. And she calls out to Jesus, and not in a way that's like, hey, dude. It's not in a way that it's like, hey, healer, I heard about. No. Hey, prophet. You're a prophet of Israel, right? No, that's not what she says. What she says is absolutely amazing. It is mind-boggling, but what she says is, Master, have compassion on me. Not just any master either, not just a teacher, but she adds the Son of David. Essentially saying, my king. This is a Canaanite woman They're mortal enemies. They sacrificed their children to their false gods. They were the occupiers of the land of Israel that God said, you know what, you got to take care of them. They are the enemies of the enemies of the enemies of his people. And this woman comes and says, Master, you're my king. Have compassion on me. Whew. How did she know who he was? Surprise. How did this woman, this Canaanite woman, know that he is the king of Israel? Not just the king of Israel, king of all kings. And her master. Just absolutely mind-boggling. Have compassion on me. And Jesus, what's really amazing is he doesn't say a single word. He's like, not a single word to this person pouring out their heart, their compassion, right? Their desire for their daughter to be healed. He doesn't. It says that Jesus didn't say a word, and that is totally out of character, right, of what we think about Jesus. Compassionate, loving. What happened here? He's giving her the hand. And then he goes another step. But she persists. It keeps going after Jesus. And Jesus says, well, wait a minute. I came first. I came first for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Why would I give my bread to my bread for my children to the dogs? So he goes a step further, not only almost ignoring her, but then calls her a dog, right? People a dog. And in that reference, I believe it is basically saying, you're like those that have no master and just feed off the scrapes of society, off the scraps, off the, and really just as like packs of people going and consuming, not living in light. And she persists. And what does she say? Says, yeah, but even the little dogs have a right to eat the crumbs off their master's table. So she reiterated the fact that he is her master. And he is marveled. He is surprised and says, you know what? Oh, woman, may it be exactly what you desire. And instantly, her daughter was healed. The demons cast it out. Unbelievable story. So surprising, right? And again, this is a Canaanite woman, somebody outside of Israel, outside of Jerusalem, who recognized him, right? And if you guys read on, if you want, it's absolutely incredible, this story, because guess what happens next? His disciples join. A couple days later, there is another feeding of thousands. Not just you guys, I'm sure all remember the story, right? The feeding of the 5,000, the loaves and the fish. There's another feeding. That's all. That was within, Israel, and most of them were all Jews and maybe some Gentiles in that mix too. But this time there was an even bigger miracle. He fed 7,000, preached for 3 days, and multiplied 3 fish and 4 loaves into feeding them all over that entire time. A bigger miracle than before. All because of this Canaanite woman, right? Open the door. Big surprises all along. Getting back to the silence, though, I don't want to leave it there because I think God sometimes uses silence to draw you out. So this goes back to what most people may or may not understand this, but it's a Jewish teaching style. And it's kind of like, it's almost Socratic. It requires conversation. In Jewish tradition, you talk, you argue, you discuss ideas and concepts. And sometimes you sit there in silence. And sometimes you let people stew in the silence so that they think and so that they can respond. And those responses, how we react, help us to think through the issues. And that's what God does to us sometimes, right? You go to God, sometimes you might be angry, you might be frustrated, you might be surprised about things that are happening in your life. And you call out and you don't hear anything back. And I want you to know that God is listening. He hears you, but he might be playing his silence card. He might be waiting because there's something in there that you are probably needing to learn. So Jesus was in no doubt happily surprised, but even more so, Jesus delighted in surprising others. Time and time again, Jesus surprised the Pharisees, the crowds, even his disciples, with his radical, upside-down responses. The world was expecting him to be a warrior king, hulking it up, overthrowing the Romans and ruling with power. Instead, Jesus came to fulfill the law and usher in the kingdom of heaven, but not with swords, not with might. No, he did so by turning expectations on their head. He came as a servant. He came in humility, and he came to die on the cross. All of that was absolutely surprising to everyone back then. Incredible. Think about his interactions with the least of these. Jesus welcomed sinners, touched lepers, and ate with tax collectors. When people were ready to throw stones, Jesus was ready to offer forgiveness. He turned moments of judgment into moments of grace. He was constantly surprising people with his responses. He didn't react like a normal person. He didn't react how I normally would. He reacted like the Son of God, full of grace, truth, and love. So, here it is. Our challenge is to surprise others by reacting like Jesus. That's the practical lesson for today. If you're not a Jesus follower, then this is probably what you've been waiting for a long time. Christians acting like Jesus, right? And I truly believe this will benefit you. What I recommend in a few moments. If you're a Jesus follower, though, then this isn't optional. Jesus invited and instructed his followers to do this in everything we do. So here it is. What if we, like Jesus, started surprising others with how we react? What if instead of reacting out of anger and bitterness or pride, we choose to respond with love and grace and compassion? And I heard this phrase from Andy Stanley, a great lead pastor of North Point Community Church. Our reactions speak louder than our words or actions. I'll say that again. Our reactions speak louder than anything else. It's not your words, not your actions, it's our reactions. That's what makes a follower of Christ different. We react with love and in love. So let me ask you something. What's super annoying to you? What is it that perturbs you, disturbs you, or makes you upset? Okay? What's that one thing, and maybe it's a person, that just provokes you all the time. Maybe it's a situation that always makes you respond in a way that doesn't exactly reflect the best of you. Maybe it's that coworker who never listens or maybe steals your credit. Or maybe it's that family member who just knows how to push your buttons. Maybe it's that driver cutting you off on the way to work. That happens to be every day now. Or a post on social media that gets under your skin. What's that moment when you're tempted to act out of frustration, selfishness, anger, or impatience? And I want you to think about that moment, all right? Then I want you to think about what would Jesus' surprising response be in that situation? What would Jesus do? What would it look like to respond with grace when you're tempted to lash out? How would Jesus handle that situation differently? And then the next time when that situation happens, next time you're triggered, all right, and it will happen, it'll happen this week, guarantee you. If you've identified it, it's going to happen. Maybe today, the moment, maybe me. Actually, I might push your button, I don't know. I hope not. But it will happen. And so I want you to surprise yourself with your reaction, okay? Surprise those around you with your reaction. So that they say, who is this person, right? Who is this dad? What have you done with him? Who are these kids? I only counted to 5. I don't understand. I want you to respond like Jesus. Pay attention to how others react to it. Because here's the kicker. When you surprise people with grace, they can't help but notice. Your surprise will make them thrive. And before I close, I can't do a sermon without some kind of Hebrew lesson in here. So I've done a little bit, but you can see up here, there's some Hebrew letters up there. And so there isn't a direct word in biblical Hebrew that exactly parallels the modern concept of surprise. But in the Bible, moments of astonishment or amazement might be described by this term, tamia, meaning astonishment or wonder. And I geek out on this stuff. I look at the individual letters of that make up the word. So in Hebrew, there's no vowels. It's all consonants, but they add in the vowels just to help you pronounce it after the fact. But when it's written over to the those Hebrew letters on the left, and it's a little hard. You read it from right to left. It's just the consonants. So you have to fill in the vowel sounds yourself. But Tav says that's the first letter, and that happens to be the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And what does Tav mean? It means truth. It means the sign, a life or death. It also, there's the gematria of it means 400, but anyway. Mem is the next letter, and that means water, which represents the Mashiach, the Messiah. It also represents childbirth. Hello? We kind of talked about that surprising moment, right? The womb is open. It means transformation is happening. And then it ends with, hey, here is, be disturbed, behold, thought, speech, and action. So in the very word of astonishment, you see that what makes up astonishment, right? It's truth. It's Jesus. It's transformation. It's being disturbed. It's causing you to change. And behold it in your thoughts and in your actions. It's kind of fun. I love that stuff. Anyway, Tamia, I'll recap. So we've taken another look at the aspect of Jesus' heart this morning, and we focused in on the emotion of surprise and how surprise accompanies significant moments in our lives. And that was true for Jesus as well. And how Jesus' reactions were wildly surprising even today, right? And that's your challenge for this week as a follower of Christ and non-follower of Christ, if you are. Identify that one thing and think about how Jesus would respond to that one thing. And then do that the next time that one thing happens. Surprise like Jesus. And I highly recommend you start with your family. Your hubby, your wife, your kids, that cousin, whoever. It's great. Start with family. Relationships matter. We talked about that the last time I spoke. Heal those relationships with your family by responding in surprising ways. So start with family. Start with friends. And see what happens. And I want you guys to try this. I really do. So let me and Tim know what happens when you do it this week. All right? So send an email to Tim. Respond on Planning Center. There's a couple of different ways you can do it. Start a chat in Planning Center. It's pretty hip if you got a small group and you're in the groups and go to the groups, then you can actually start a chat with your group in there. You can send in a prayer request and just put it in the prayer request. Say, hey, check out this. This is what happened to me this week when I tried this really silly, surprising thing, right? My reactions. Do it. Let us know, because it's fun. It's fun to see. It's going to be fun and surprising to experience your surprise that you're going to get when you do this week. So church, let's go out this week and be determined. And in God's way, in Jesus' way, be surprising in the best way. Let's challenge ourselves to not react like a normal person, but react like Jesus, full of love, grace, empathy, and with the power of the Holy Spirit. And let's make it a habit of it. And that's why I'm asking you to do it, so you build a habit. Each week, find that new trigger, right? Surprise the people you love with Christ's love. Let's turn every ordinary interaction into an opportunity for extraordinary grace. And may God bless you as you surprise the world with his love. Heavenly Father, Elohim, mi kamoka, who is like you? The Lion and the Lamb seated on the throne. We give you our praise and our thanks for your amazing love, your surprising reactions to our dishonorable actions. Thank you for your loyal love, your mercy, your never-ending grace. Today's message is easy to talk about and really hard to walk out of here and do. So please give us strength and patience, the discernment to react to the failures and the challenges within our relationships in a way that reflects how you have reacted to our failures. May we communicate with your love and give us the wisdom to handle our relationships in a way that honors you and those around us. We know it's our choice to follow your voice. So may we hear it clearly and follow you faithfully. In Jesus' name I pray, amen.